And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back tonight my friend, Lev A.C. Rosen, here to give us the inside scoop on his brand new book in the Evander series, Rough Pages. Lev, welcome back to Mystery and Thriller. Maybe tell us about this book.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. It is always so much fun to talk to you, Sara. And here's a book, which we were just discussing whether or not my cover artist, Colin Verity, is trying to make this my eye. I don't see it, but
it's
I don't
totally
know.
Your eye, Lev. I literally got the book and was like, oh my God, they used Lev's eye and they, made it extra fabulous, but that's totally Lev's eye. And then I just asked Lev, I was like, oh, I'm going to ask you on air. And Lev doesn't see it. Everybody, come on.
I wonder if it's like a vast conspiracy. I mean, I just think this eyebrow is much better than mine. I wish I had this eyebrow.
It's a good eyebrow. I wish I had that eyebrow. Okay, so tell us about the pages within this fabulous.
Oh, yeah, these things. So Rough Pages is the third Evander Mills mystery. And in it, we open with Andy going back to Lavender House, partially to meet their newly adopted baby, and partially because his friend Pat, who's the butler there, called him up and was like, hey, I think I put the whole family in danger. Please don't tell anyone and come talk to me. So Andy does, and in a quiet moment, he speaks to Pat, and Pat tells him that he, in his spare time, works at this bookshop, and the bookshop is owned by two queer people, and they have a book subscription service, which is sort of like the 1950s version of a book box. You sign up, you get sent a book every month. And this one is queer, which wasn't particularly unique. There were several queer book services in the early 50s. But now both of the booksellers have gone missing. And Pat is worried because there is a list of subscribers and his name is on it. And his name and address are Lavender House. And they just adopted this child. It hasn't 100% gone through yet. But if they find out that the butler's gay, that kid goes away. So, yeah, I know. It's devastating. So Andy has to find these booksellers. And during the course of that, he investigates whether maybe they were shut down by the Postal Service for sending inappropriate materials to the mail, or maybe it had something to do with one of their gambling debts with the mob. And the whole time there is a spunky reporter named Rose who bumps into Andy while he's working this case and remembers him from when he was a cop and wants to know why he left. So she's digging into him while he's digging into the booksellers. And it's all about, stories and who gets to tell stories and a lot of history on queer books, too.
Well, these are just a few of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk to you, Lev, because I was just remembering that it was almost a year ago that you and I met when we both spoke on the mystery panel at the Boston Book Festival last year. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much from you, which I'm a history nerd. I was a history minor. I love history so much. And I knew nothing about the subject matter. You were speaking about the Bell and the Fog at the time, but I didn't know about the lavender phase. I didn't know about so much about this. So I'm really excited. Or the history of Rough Pages, which I wanted you to talk about the historical element as well. But first, I just want to welcome everyone because we are broadcasting live to 7 different destinations across Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So no matter where you're watching from, mystery loving friends, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And because Mondays can be murder, we're going to make them a little less painful and get your week off to a killer start. If you've been here before, you know the drill. Every Monday, I give you my hand-picked featured authors. You get to ask them anything. Ask Lev about his YA writing. Ask him about his adult writing. This Evander Mills, will there be a book 4 we need to know? Lev is also a writing teacher. Ask him about that, about his research into queer history. We have so much to talk about. Just get the questions going in the comments, and I will get them right over to him. Randy's joining us from YouTube, and he says that eye reminds me of Adam Lambert. Oh, Randy.
That I'd believe more. Yeah.
I see Lev's eye. I don't know, you guys. I could be hallucinating, but I literally was like, oh my God, it's Lev. I was so excited peeking through the pages. And please notice that I have coordinated the banners with the color of Lev's book because I am, a dork and also that cool. So, so I just want to talk about that. Okay. So Lev, hi Renee, joining us from Southeast Florida on Facebook. Hi Renee, so good to see you. So Lev, Mary submitted a question in advance. She wants to know, can this be read as a standalone? Do you need to read Evander books 1 and 2 first?
Well, my editor would say it can be read as a standalone because that is what, she wants me to be doing. I think it works to an extent. There's some stuff early on, going back to Lavender House probably doesn't have the same resonance as if you read Lavender House. But absolutely, it can work as a standalone. You just might not get as much out of it. And I would encourage you to read the first 2, obviously. I think it's just, there's a real arc for Andy as we go along, and it's fun to see.
Lev, I always think about, because I love a series, and as a reader, I enjoy being brought along, and I live for those little Easter eggs, those little call outs where it's like, hey, if you read book 1 or 2, you're like, I know what he's talking about. You feel like you're in on the joke, or you're in on, whatever, the secret club of people who have read this book. As a writer, I always wonder, how do you meet people who are joining you on book 3 who don't know the history of Andy and Lavender House, but you have to bring the people who are your OGs, who've been with you since book 1. You got to bring them along and give them enough, meat to keep them going, but you can't leave the new people behind. How do you balance that?
Well, I think this is the first time I've done like a series, and I struggled a lot with that with The Bell in the Fog, the second one. I originally sort of just jumped right in, and my editor, said to me, she was like, I think you have to think about the fact that even if people have read the first book, it's been a year, it probably could have been a year. And that is a good thing to keep in mind. Even if you are someone who has read the first book, you need a little reminding. And she always says, you don't have to summarize the plot of book 1. You don't have to get into that. What you have to remind us of is the relationships between the characters. That's what's so important. And as long as you hit those notes, I think it carries on pretty well. Obviously, there are going to be some sort of inside jokes and stuff. And I think you just have to accept that people coming in the third book aren't necessarily going to get those as well as someone who has been, reading the series from the very start.
Right. Like I think about that from, Patricia Cornwell. She's 36 books into Kay Scarpetta. My brain melts to think how she is, keeping it interesting for people who have been with her that entire journey and are now, on book 36 with her. And we're like, we know, remember the Body Farm. But the people who are new and are like, Body Farm, so I think that is such an incredible artistic challenge. Renee saying the first 2 novels are great. Yay, we have an OG in the house. Renee, I think you're going to love this one just as much. Robin is joining us from cooler, sunny Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Robin, so great to have you. Welcome. Lexi's joining us from YouTube saying, howdy, I devoured the other 2 books in this series this summer, and I am so excited for the third. Lexi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Renee is vibing with this purple. Thank you for noticing, Renee. I appreciate that. And you. Randy wants to know, Lev, was there anything in particular that got you interested in writing? Take us back.
Oh, boy. I mean, I have been writing since I was very, 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 very little. In that I went to a small K through 8 school, only 18 kids in my grade. And when I graduated, they did like a ceremony where the teachers would sort of say something nice about everyone and give them a little present. And the thing they said about me is Lev is a wizard with words, and she gave me a little wizard statuette, which I have. I'm not going to reach for it, but it's over there.
Oh my God, a little wizard. That's so cute.
And so like it's been something I do pretty much for as long as I can remember. So I don't. My first word was book. Like it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, this has been woven into the fabric of me for a while.
Oh my
So I
God,
can't speak to what got me into it.
oh my gosh, I love that. Randy, thank you for that great question. Now we know about Lev's little wizard statue and that his first word was book. We wouldn't know that without Randy's question. Thank you, Randy. Renee's going back to the question about how to bring people along. She's saying she does need reminders. Renee, that's such a great point because now that I'm really thinking about this, it's like we all have read other books in between. So we do need those reminders. But it must be hard, I imagine, to weave them in artfully so it's not like, hey, in last book where I almost died, you know.
Yeah, no, I've definitely read some where it can be very like so and so, my sister who is like X, you know, like who has this personality and is always doing this thing. And like I understand it by book 36, or you just want to like, all right, guys, here we go, refresher course. But yeah, if I get to book 36, I'll let you know how that works.
Well, that brings me up to my next question. Lev, you are at book 3 of 3. This is book 3 of 3. Mm-hmm. Will there be a book 4? Will there be a book 36? Give us the scoop.
There will definitely be a book 4. I am just finishing up the rough draft of that.
A rough draft of Rough Pages, a sequel?
Yes, which I came up with a new title for it today because my working title, the publisher was sort of about, and I understood why. But I haven't gotten the okay yet, so I'm not going to share it. But I like it, so I hope they okay it. And if there's more beyond that, I hope so. But that decision hasn't been made yet, and it's not made by me, unfortunately. So go out and buy 900 copies, and then there will be a book 5 and 6, hopefully.
Would you go 36 books long if you could, Lev?
36, I don't know about. I would love to get. There are two things driving me. Okay, I feel two things. One of them is history. I would love to get to 1959 because there was a particular thing that happened in queer history in San Francisco that is amazing and would make an amazing book, especially for Andy, and would make a good, sort of story to go out on. But Rough Pages and the sequel were still in 1953. So that's 6 years to go, and I've been going 2 books a year, which means it would be 12 more. It would be 16 total. That feels like a lot. I don't know if I could do that much. So I might have to start putting more time between each book as I go along. But I have many ideas that I would really like to do. I'd really love to get to at least 8. 8 would be a good one.
Renee is saying, wow. Yes, exactly, Renee. That's my expression too. Robin saying, yay, book 4. And yes, more, please. Samantha's joining us from YouTube saying, yay, so glad there will be a book 4. I love the history and feel of the time and place of these novels. Yeah, me too. Why are the 1950s so freaking sexy and cool and just like, Humphrey Bogart in a coat. I'm just, a trench coat and the hats. I mean, I'm just so here for it. Love your response.
I think there's this interesting tension, especially in those early post-war years, between the sort of noir that came out of the war and the post-war, getting back to normal, the sort of luxury of the 50s, those ads for washing machines and all this stuff that was happening. But then we're also living with this 1930s and 40s energy of like, oh, everything bad is happening all the time. And I think there's this conflict between what is normal, what have we just gone through, and this idea of a world going from trauma to luxury. And that's really interesting because it's like, how far along are people in that moment, especially when we talk about queer people. The trauma just keeps coming as the world keeps telling them, no, we're going back to normalize it, we're going back to, luxury. And then you look at stuff, like in The Bell and the Fog, I get into this. The war was in many ways at the beginning really liberating for queer people, but then by the end it became really not. So it's a fascinating moment, not just in history, but specifically in queer history.
Thank you, 11. Thank you, Samantha, for that question. Robin would like to know, she says, sorry if this has been asked. No, it hasn't, Robin. You're just on time. Is there an audio book? And if so, do you get a say in the narrator?
Yes. The audiobooks are read by Vikas Adam, who is amazing. We've hung out a few times. And it's not always the case that you get to pick your narrator. But in this case, I specifically went hunting for what I wanted, which was a queer narrator and someone who could really do that noir stuff. And he has done audiobooks of Raymond Chandler. And I was like, oh. So I listened to some clips of his Chandler and I was like, this guy, I want this guy. And the audio department at Macmillan, amazing. They made it happen.
Well, I love that. Robin, thank you for asking. And my God, to get Raymond Chandler's narrator, what an
He's
incredible.
So good. I listened to some of the audio of Rough Pages, and one of the missing booksellers. Oh, this is a spoiler. Okay, it's only a light spoiler. Careers. One of the missing booksellers shows up pretty quickly. Her name is Dee Dee, and she's an older woman. And when he does Dee Dee's voice, I swear to God, it's an entirely different person. And he's done that for every book, where it's just oh, I have to work hard to realize that these aren't, this isn't a multicast production.
Wow. I mean, what an incredible, incredible talent. I actually just met an audiobook narrator while I was browsing in the East End bookstore in Provincetown, in P-Town. And she was browsing too. And now we're friends. And she and her husband are both audiobook narrators and voice actors. And it was such an incredible, amazing random meeting of these two really cool people who have really cool jobs. That's their full-time jobs. Is they're just
such a wild job.
Her name is which also just sounds
it'd be sort of fun. I'm going to read books out loud, but then you hear what they do, and it's amazing. It's just amazing.
Right, exactly. I auditioned to be a reader for my book, and it promptly did not get it. And I realized on take 27, it was way harder than I realized.
I've never volunteered to read my books. I do not want to do that. I don't think anyone would do that.
I'm going to keep the dream alive. Maybe someday it'll happen for me. You guys, here is the link to order Rough Pages from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So whether you're watching with us on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, here is that link. Grab your copy of Rough Pages, book 4 in the Evander Mills series.
And they might have some of these bookmarks left that I made in a pre-order. So it's for the fake bookshop in the book.
Oh my God, I love that. Oh, that's
and so cool. If you pre-order it from them, even if they don't have any left, and I'll send them more if they don't. John, just talk to me. But if you pre-order it and go to my website, I will mail you one of these. No problem.
Oh my God. Okay, perfect. So DM Lev or me, or email Lev through his website, and we will get you that signed copy. Robin is saying she is so happy to hear that you got your narrator pick. She said, side note, I really hope the voice of Marcellus in Remarkably Bright Creatures is cast in the movie. Okay, I don't know that voice, but isn't it amazing how when the voice is just right, we're like, yes, and when the voice is wrong, we're like, you want to claw the skin off your own face, or claw your ears off.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Annalie, welcome to the conversation, saying, looking forward to the third in this series. I'm in a queer reading group, and I'm also a hardcore mystery reader. Historical mysteries are a great bridge between mystery readers and other readers. That's such a great point, Annalie. Thank you so much. Historical mysteries are such a great because and as both someone who loves mysteries and historical and I'm a history nerd and a history minor, it's like when you're reading, it's such a great bridge because when you're reading a historical, you're getting this whole other level of information and experience, and people who say, oh, I don't like mysteries, is like, actually, I think you will.
Yeah, it's fun to learn.
Robin is saying, ooh, Renee and I both love bookmarks. Well, you can get this fabulous one
Go
that
to my website. There's a link. You just fill out a form. It is no problem.
Yay! Sharon, welcome to the conversation. Howdy do to you, ma'am. So good to see you. And I want to take a peek at some of the praise that this book has earned. Love, specifically, I want to talk about that review from Publishers Weekly. I'm going to pop it up so that we can all read it together. But they praise, hold on, I'm going to get it here. I'm just scrolling through all of the comments because we are going to get to all of these. They say they call the book immersive, which I really loved. Again, going into that historical setting that you were able to, I'm having trouble getting it here. That historical setting that you were able, and vibe, that noir vibe that you were able to create for us. And here it is. They say Rosen buttresses hold on, I'm going to pop it up so you can all read it. His solid suspense plot with a rendering of mid-century San Francisco that feels realistic in its depiction of the dangers facing the city's gay residents, but refreshingly optimistic about their ability to lead fulfilled lives. I love how they honed in on that. Lev, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of thing. I always think of one of the hearts of what noir is and there's a difference between the old movies and the old books, and I've read everything by Chandler, but like my heart is with Bogart and Bacall. So when I think of these noir movies that were made under the Hays Code, where they changed stuff ever so slightly, and it was about stars and chemistry, one of the heart of noir is this idea that it's someone in the darkness, but if it's more than someone, it's a community in the darkness, facing that darkness alone and finding light within each other. And I know that's not always how people interpret what a noir is. Certainly there's stuff where it's just like, nothing is any pure nihilism noir. But to me, this sort of, jammy yolk noir, if not hard boiled, is something that is really beautiful and refreshing, especially when we're talking about queer stories. Queer stories can so easily just become tragedy after tragedy. And don't get me wrong, it was impossible to, to even imagine how difficult it was to be queer back then. And that's even if you believe in a queer community prior to Stonewall, which many people don't. So being able to show that and show that there were these amazing lives being lived and relationships being had in the community, which there was, I've done a lot of research. There was a queer community in the 50s. There were many queer communities. Being able to display that and say, hey, yeah, it sucked, but they got through it together is something that's really beautiful as we go through things that suck again.
Exactly. And I think that is the benefit and the beauty and the necessity of history, is that it provides a roadmap of where we've been and the potholes to avoid going forward. And that's one of the many reasons that I think history, is so necessary and so important. Yeah, please.
I was just going to say with this one, so much of it is about books and book bannings and that, and it's banned book week. So, that is something that as an author of an extremely challenged and banned book obviously resonated with me. So being able to go back and do that research and see how book banning was handled in the 50s when the American Library Association first put out their Freedom to Read Act. Like that was responding to something that was happening then, something that we're going through again now. And being able to see how they handled it then and know that not only did we get through it, we got through it to the point where like people forgot about a lot of it. That is sort of refreshing. Although we did also forget about the fact that in the 50s, there were numerous gay books, many of them big bestsellers. So like there's all this history that has been forgotten, and being able to see it again is really exciting.
It's really exciting for us too, Lev. Thank you. John's joining us from Facebook saying, greetings from Northeast Ohio. Hey, John, great to have you. Welcome to the conversation. Robin saying the proximity of San Francisco and Santa Cruz, both relatively safe havens for queer culture and many fabulous writers over many, many years. I didn't know that about Santa Cruz. Thank you for sharing. Samantha on Facebook saying, yes, that was the feeling that I got reading We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian, a queer romance set in 1950s New York. There were dangers, but there was ultimately hope in love and community. Beautifully said, Samantha. Thank you so much. I want to let you guys know that the book is available to order from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is Murder by the Book, and Lev is providing these very cool bookmarks that he designed, featuring.
Well, my cover artist designed them. I'm not going to take credit for that.
And very cool. Sharon wants to know. Lev, how do you want your readers to feel at the end of this novel? What a beautiful question.
That is a great question. I think that at the end of Rough Pages, what I'm really hoping a reader takes away is, a deeper understanding of what it is to tell one story and what it is to have one story told for them, and the importance of stories and books themselves. So, I mean, it's so hard to like get into it without being too spoilery. So I'm going to avoid specifics. But I think this is a book about how books create community and what it is to be able to tell your own story or not.
Oh, I love that. And I think there's a lot to really sit with and meditate on there, because I think one thing we don't think about is who is telling the story, right? Like even when it comes to, for instance, newspapers, the New York Times says all the news that's fit to print, but who determines what news is fit to print? And so when we start to think about not just the story, but the teller of the story and who's making those choices, and it gets very interesting and very complex very, very quickly.
And that's what happens with that intrepid reporter, spunky reporter, Rose Rainmeyer, who...
Tell us about the spunky reporter.
Yeah, I loved writing Rose. I took a big dash of His Girl Friday for Rose. And the thing about a spunky, intrepid girl reporter, that sort of classic archetype, is that if she's investigating you and you're a gay detective, she's essentially, if she like writes anything about you, she's put a hit out on you. So he has to work with her, but at the same time, he has to hide from her. And that is a fascinating and really fun dynamic to write. So she's, fast talking and smart. But if she figures it out, she could destroy him. So how do you work with someone like that? How do you ally yourself with someone who you don't know if they're going to decide that it's worth ruining your life to tell a good story?
Well, I happen to be a huge fan of His Girl Friday. I own that movie. I've watched it countless times. And Rosalind Russell, Cary Grant. I mean, the
Well, then
fact
you'll catch a few Easter eggs.
so many Easter eggs, and based on the book, the front page, sorry,
Mhm.
the screenplay, the front page, which was
Yeah.
made, even before His Girl Friday. I just absolutely love those two movies. So I was so excited to learn that Rose is based on Hildy. So yay. All right, y'all, we are out of time. Time flies when you are having this fun. So once again, here is that link to order Rough Pages, book 3 in the Evander Mills series. And Lev has revealed that there is a book 4 forthcoming due to the publisher, to the editor, on October 15th. So we have to let Lev get back to his writing desk and
Really
write
close to being
those
done.
pages, so that we have a book 4 to read and enjoy next year. Renee saying thank you, Lev and Sarah. Thank you, Renee. Lev, thank you so much for coming back
Oh
to
my
Mystery.
gosh, thank you so much for having me. It is always a delight.
It is always a delight to host you, and we cannot wait to have you back next year for Evander Mills book 4, the title currently under review and to be revealed. All right, y'all, go get a snack, get a drink, and I will be back at the top of the hour with intrepid girl reporter in real life, Julia Dahl, and her latest standalone, I Dreamed of Falling. Stay tuned.